Hello, welcome to another episode of Come and See. As you can see today, we have a full house. We are going to be talking about a subject that is quite controversial, and we want to hear everybody's opinion on it. The subject for today is homosexuality, and we're going to start by introducing my co-host, Jean Shawi, and then if you guys can please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Marlene.
I'm Mary. I'm Majorca.
I'm Clara. I'm Luigi.
I'm God.
I'm Ezra.
And I'm David.
Great, wonderful, thank you guys. John, do you want to start leading this episode?
Sure. So if you've been watching us for the past few weeks, you'll notice that these are the group of youth that has done the last few episodes with us. And when we told them that we're going to do an episode about homosexuality and how it's viewed in the church and what, that topic specifically, they all volunteered to come back. So that's why there's like 8 of them sitting there instead of the regular 2 or 3. And that in itself should be an indication of how controversial this topic is. So I'll throw out the first question and we'll take it from there. So, and just for the audience, when you want to answer, the first question is going to be open to everybody. Just take the mic, answer, and let me know what you think. First of all, who here has a friend that is homosexual? All right.
Show of hands is good too.
Show of hands is good too, you're right. And who here understands whether homosexuality is wrong or right? And what is homosexuality? Okay, let's start with Ezra.
Well, I understand that homosexuality is wrong because several times in the Bible it's been mentioned as an abomination, which clearly isn't good. And the second part of your question was...
What was the second part of my question? See, this is what happens when you talk about this topic. No, I think...
You said what is homosexuality?
Yeah, and what is homosexuality?
It's when 2 of the same gender decide to get together, I guess you could say.
Okay. Nice enough way of saying it. I'm good. You also wanted to answer this question.
Yeah. My view of homosexuality is bad because my Sunday school servants have told me why. Because it's written in the Bible that it, like he said, it's an abomination, which is, bad. And the definition, like my understanding of it, is when two people of the same gender are dating or having a relationship where it's like a spouse and like a husband and wife, except of the same gender.
Okay. Let me ask you a question to kind of settle everybody's mind that's watching us. Do we hate gay people?
No.
Does the church tell us to hate gay people?
No.
Does God teach us to hate gay people?
No.
Very good. Now we're clear. So now we can move on, okay? With that in mind, what is our approach to the concept of homosexuality? Do we accept it? Is that something that we should be okay with? The world today teaches us that homosexuality is normal. The majority of the time, when you talk or to somebody about it, or when you hear other people talking about it, they call it a choice. It's a choice. You make your choice. Do you want to be this? Do you want to be that? It's a life choice, like choosing a BMW or a Mercedes to drive. My question to you is, how do you view it, and should it be normal? Should we accept it? Majorca, you look like you're anxious.
Nowadays, it's actually is a popular trend, or it happens a lot. We see it a lot in school. And the problem is with me, of course, I was taught that it was the wrong thing, but that's what I was taught. That's not something I grew up with myself knowing. So being taught something and growing up having your own opinion is completely different. You're taught to think it's wrong. So we're taught that it's wrong, and we're also taught not to judge, which is kind of difficult to pair together, since you see these two people, you're like, oh, I was told this is bad, so why do I have to be friendly to them, or like why do I just stay normal to them? So it's just hard to pair up, I guess.
So that's an awesome segue to this, right? So judgment, right? You're taught that this is the wrong thing, and you're taught not to judge anybody. But let me ask you this. If you knew your friend lies, would you automatically hate them and shun them and judge them?
No.
No. But do you know lying is wrong?
Yeah.
I think the issue is that we look at homosexuality as something different than a sin just like all other sins, right? So give me an example of a situation that you found yourself in at school where homosexuality was presented to you and how you dealt with it. Good, bad, or whatever, doesn't matter. Just examples. David?
If I can go back a little bit in the previous conversation and just add, we had a retreat one time and the subject came up. It was a lesson and teaching us like what the wrongs are and how we should approach that. And one of my servants asked me, well, the same question that you just asked, and said, is it wrong, and how do we not judge the person? She said that we're taught to love everyone the same way like Jesus loved us, and that we're always going to love that person no matter what their choice is, but that we can't support them in the action that they're partaking in. That we do still love you, but we can't support you in gay marriage, or we can't support you in having a relationship with the same sex. So that's all I wanted to say.
Let me ask you a question. How do you feel when you see a man and a woman having a relationship outside of marriage?
Are we talking from a church point of view?
From their point of view.
Okay.
I feel uncomfortable and like sort of disturbed, just not because like that's not what I'm usually around.
It's adulterous, I guess you could say, because it's not something that, I mean, in the relationship, meaning how?
Like if you see a man and a woman and you know that they're sleeping together but they're not married, how comfortable are you around that?
Not comfortable.
Okay. Mayarka?
Like it's like the same type feeling. We know what's wrong and what's not supposed to be allowed, but we see it so much that sometimes you get used to it. Like for me, honestly, I'm used to seeing that and I'm used to hearing about that. So.
Can I interrupt and just add one thing? Can I ask what type of relationship it is? Like if it's a
Like if you know it's a sinful relationship. It's
okay.
It's something that God doesn't agree with.
Well, that certainly does make the person uncomfortable because we've been taught that that's wrong. We've been taught that it's not something that you should do. It's not something that that's right by God. So, of course, you're gonna feel a bit of uncomfortness or just weird because, especially if the person is part of the church and that they have been taught that too.
Let me guys ask you a question just by show of hands. There's 8 of you here that were raised in the church, and Mayurka brought up a very good point that I want to kind of track back to. What you're taught growing up sometimes doesn't totally mesh with how you feel inside sometimes. So there's 8 of you here. Just show of hands, how many of you are conflicted about whether it's okay to be gay? So 3 out of 8, right? That's about 40%. So I want to kind of step back for a second and ask about what is the difference between judging an action and judging a person. Because like you said, you're taught something growing up, and yet 40% of you don't really know if it's okay or not okay. Like you feel like it should be okay because you have friends who are gay, you are surrounded by people who are gay. And so my question to you is, do we understand the difference between judging a person When God says, thou shalt not judge, he's talking about people, he's talking about a person. But do we understand the difference between that and judging the action, or judging the sin itself? Right? Yes? No? Maybe so? Okay, Majorca, you're the only one shaking your head no. Tell me why.
I feel like the person is, like, their actions describe the person. So if you judge their action, you're pretty much just like judging them.
But can the person change?
Person can change, but it just depends on the person. Like, some people are stubborn-minded and they stay the same way.
So if I call you a liar, is that different than saying Majorca lied?
I mean, that was the action I did, and then you're calling me a liar, but you're calling me the liar.
So that's the difference, right? That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, so do you see what he's saying? There is a difference between the two, between being a liar and just making that one mistake, lying just that one time.
Sometimes it, like, connects, though. Like, in my mind, I think it connects, because either way, it's that person. They don't see it as two different things. They see it as, like, oh, it's towards me.
Which actually is a good point, because believe it or not, I used to be you. Okay, and one of the things that I always noticed is that my parents came from Egypt and brought me here when I was 11. Okay, so I grew up here and I saw a lot of things all around me that I thought were completely normal. But then my parents would come to me and say, no, this is wrong. I'm like, no, it's not wrong. You're old-fashioned. You're from a different country. You don't understand how it works here. It is normal, okay? Until I got to an age and I was like, oh, it isn't normal. So I think what made all the difference for me is when I got a little bit older, I got married, I had a son, and now I have to teach him that certain things are not normal. And he looks at me and he's like, you're old-fashioned. You don't know. This is normal. So I used to be you. So I feel like this will eventually change, but like I was just like that. I felt like maybe it was coming from my parents, that they just didn't know anything.
So I feel like we still need to address this point a little bit more, right? Because that's the clutch of everything. Why we feel a certain way towards a sin that we don't feel the same way towards other sins, right? I think the issue is that, okay, let me ask you this. Is pedophilia okay?
No.
Show of hands. Who is unsure if pedophilia is okay? You see the difference? Right? Now, imagine you live in a community, or imagine you live in a country where pedophilia is the norm. And you move to that country and you spend the next 15 years there. I'm willing to bet that 40% of you will raise their hands and say, well, I'm not sure, I've been around it for so long. I think that's the issue. The reason this topic is so touch and go, and I want to hear your opinions, is because it's so prevalent. How many people do you know personally in school or otherwise that are homosexual? Let's go down the row. I'm good.
I mean, I know a few people that are homosexual, and right now they're going through the teenage stages, but what I think why they're homosexual is why they feel a connection when they're with that person. They have a missing thing inside of them that there's a hole that is filled when they are with that person or when they are doing that act. And that's why a lot of homosexuals form. But, I mean, in this society where homosexuality is being supported and being growing every day, everybody is just going to say, I like it, I'm just going to go with it. We also have to look at their childhoods and how they were being raised, in what environment were they being raised. That's how many psychological things happen and form.
Okay, so I personally don't know the like the people I can think of, but off the top of my head, I know of 2 at least.
Okay.
Mary?
I don't really personally know that many, but I do know of a lot that I have come encounter with before. And this might be a little off topic, but earlier you said that some people find it as a choice. And for a while, I've talked to my parents about it before, that I did find it, like, as they have a choice to do it, to, like, be homosexual or not. And, like, in the Bible, it does say that it's wrong, but at the same time, some people don't know that it's a choice and that it, like, can be, like, fixed. And yeah, that's just how I feel.
Okay. Erica?
In my high school, personally, there's a lot, and it's just, there's people that come out and some people that still hide because they're afraid of that certain judgment, and we just never know who actually is and who actually isn't.
Laura?
I don't personally know them, the ones who are homosexual, but I see them at school. Like, I see a couple, like 4 or 5 of them.
There's only one at my school, and she's confident about it, and she doesn't care what people think.
I know that there's a couple of them at my school, but I personally know one. We're not friends, but I know who he is. We have a couple classes together, and I want to say that I don't treat him any differently than any of other people that I talk to, but whenever I do see him or whenever we talk, I do, in the back of my mind, I am thinking about, okay, how would God want me to, talk to this person, or how would God want me to, not judge him, because he's equal to me, but he's just making a wrong decision.
I want to say, in my school, it's not necessarily supported, but it's paraded, kind of thing. All around you see these American flags, but the stripes are replaced with the gay flag. And I personally know, I think maybe about 5 off the top of my head.
So I could tell you from personal experience, if you would have came early 90s and asked me that question in my high school in New Jersey, I would have told you I don't know any. And we had a pretty big high school. So the reason I asked you this question and I had you guys each say what you wanted to say about it is because I don't think God calls us, one, we already covered this in the beginning, right? God doesn't call us to hate anybody. God doesn't call us to despise anybody. That's not who we are as Christians. If Christ was here, he would look at these people and he would have pity on them, knowing that they're not going to make it into his kingdom, right? But it's not a judgment. I'm not looking at you to say, you suck, you're not going to make it, you're horrible, you're a bad person. That's not the point, right? When you see somebody that, and I don't mean that, that I'm trying to compare it, but I want you to understand what I'm saying. When you see somebody that is ill or has an illness that is, whether it's in their hand, they caused it, or whether they didn't cause it, at that point, that's not even a question, right? The question is, they have an illness, am I going to pray for them or am I not? Am I going to, make sure that I mention them in my prayer, that God helps them, or am I not? And that's what it comes down to.
I actually have a question for you, John. Well, speaking out against it in school will result in hefty punishments or possibly suspension for hate. I guess you could call it hate speech or something like that. So how do you propose we speak out against it? Or try and make people aware of why it's wrong?
That's a touchy subject.
I mean, I think you answered the question in the word you used, right? Hate speech. A lot of even Christians today, a lot of people today all over the world, when they're talking about this topic and they're talking against it, they're talking with such hate towards these people that it is hate speech, right? But that's not what we're taught. We're taught to testify for our Lord, right? For what is true and what is right. And you have to understand that in Egypt right now and in other countries, there's physical persecution, right? Here, it's not physical. It's mental. It's your faith is being persecuted. Your beliefs are being persecuted. And that's what makes the difference between the martyr and not the martyr, right? You can still be a martyr here without having to be killed, right? And it's in situations like this. But the answer is how do you address it? And are you addressing it because you want to put them down? You want to show them that they're not going to make it to heaven. You guys suck. You're gay. We hate you. Yeah, that's hate speech. That's not the point of it, right? But if you get the opportunity because someone asks, then that's where you have to decide what are you going to be. Are you going to be a follower of Christ? Are you going to be somebody who represents the truth, the light? Or are you not going to choose to be martyred? Are you going to choose to just sit back and take the easy road? We're each going to be asked about our specific life, right? All the situations you're put in for a reason. Tell me about a situation where that happened.
So in my school, they really do support it because they have a club. They have a gay society club. And they always tell us not to judge on religion, not to judge on who's with who. So in that club, there's a bunch of people that no one knew ever really were that. So it draws huge attention to it. It's just we can't say anything about it because the school takes it as, oh, they have their freedom. So it's like a law thing. So if they have their freedom, then we can't say anything.
That's actually a perfect example. I have in my company, they actually, in the past 2 years, they've created a club basically for the same thing, for homosexuals, for transgendered people, things like that. So my question to you is, in your school, if your school has a similar club like that, and a club has an event, and they invite everybody, do you show up or do you not? Your best friend is going and they're inviting you. Do you show up or do you not?
But I feel like that
And I'll explain why.
is somewhat of an easy example because you could easily say, no, you're not going to go. But if we take it a step further.
Mayarka's face is not saying it's an easy example.
No, but I mean, if we take it a step further to maybe that the club president is one of your really good friends. What happens then? So we're taking it to a more personal level because if it's a party, you can say yes or no.
And this person invites you. Do you go or you don't?
I just want to say, if you have these ideals that it's wrong, then you shouldn't go because that's only just going to cause chaos or just war, or it's just better for you to leave that so there won't be such chaos and you won't like going back to, like, they will, when you get punished, which will happen, it will be considered as something as hate speech because you're speaking out against homosexuals.
So if I may touch on that really quick, I want to give you an example from my life. I work at a pretty large university that has 90% liberal views. Okay, so with everything that has been happening recently, a lot of them came out and spoke out against any conservatives and how conservatives view the world and view homosexuality and abortion and just so many different things. And honestly, I am a pretty open-minded person. I listen to all views and I assess them and I talk to different people. But the way they approach the subjects rubbed me the wrong way. When someone comes at me and says, this is my opinion and this is why it's my opinion, and they're talking about it in such a manner that seems like it is hate speech, I don't want to hear it. But we as Christians can talk about such subjects with love in a way that is not considered hate speech. Because if you're talking against a subject and you're just telling them, and this is my opinion, and this is why I see that it's wrong. If you're talking in a calm manner and so on, it's perceived differently. So it's really the way you approach the subject and the way you approach the people. But if you're coming at them with a hateful way, so if you're already angry from the inside, it will portray when you actually talk to them. And that's how I felt when I was in that school. Every time I went outside, I would see people holding up the microphones and talking and so on. I felt like they were coming at me with anger because, you know what? They were angry from the inside. But if you're filled with love towards them from the inside, there's no way that you're going to portray anger. Does that kind of make sense?
I have a question. So at school, I'm part of the Republican Club, and I often, like, since I'm an officer, I often meet with the leaders of the Democrat Club. And the sponsor is a gay male who's a teacher. And so he obviously knows our views on homosexuality. And we have respect for each other, because he even taught my sister, and he loved my sister. But whenever we talk, it just creates a really high tension. What do we do if we're in that situation?
But again, why? Are you talking to him as a person,
Yeah.
or are you talking to him as a homosexual person?
As a person, just like, oh.
Because as a person, I can't imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you're talking to someone as just a person, two human beings interacting with each other, I can't imagine where the tension would come from, except if there are some emotions that are attached to it, some negative emotions attached to it. And I'm not a psychologist by any means, but that's how I feel. If you have I'm not sure, if you have no negative energy or no negative emotions towards that person, there is no way that there would be tension there. If you're looking at them the way Jesus looked at Mary Magdalene, or the way he looked at the Samaritan woman, there shouldn't be tension. I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but what do you think?
I mean, I think you're right. A big part of it is what they see in your eye when you're talking to them, right? But also, everybody comes to you with their whole life experience. So you're not the first person they ever talk to in their life, so they come at you with preconceptions. They come at you with, already things in their head about what Christians are going to say and how Christians view me, and I already have my defenses up. If I'm gay and I'm coming to talk to a bunch of Christians, I believe they're going to condemn me, right? So this is a barrier that you have to break down, right? And it starts with a group anywhere, right? Christ started with 12, and that changed the world. So there's 8 of you on this couch and on the floor. I mean, it doesn't take much more than that to change anything, to change a school, to change the community. I just want to mention one quick thing from the Bible when we were talking about if you get invited, do you go or you don't, right? And I think the answers come a lot easier if you know the Bible, if you know what God's commandments are. So in the first Psalm, it says, first verse, first Psalm, it says, "Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful." So just in that first verse, it talks about standing, sitting, or walking with someone who's ungodly, scornful, or wicked. At the end of the day, if you understand God's expectation from you, decisions like this become very easy. And it becomes very clear. And it becomes black and white. And it's not as gray as the world makes it seem. But you have to know how God views everybody. To God, these people are still His creation, right? So He differentiates between the sinful life and the person. He differentiates between the sin and the sinner. He has mercy and He loves the sinner and waits for him to come back. But God does not love the sin. God hates the sin, right? Like Ezra mentioned, God calls it an abomination, right? So the sin is there. There's no question about it. There's no ands, ifs, or buts. The question is always, how do you deal with the person? And my opinion is that you deal with that person the same way you deal with any person committing any sin, with love. Go ahead, Ahmed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I want to get on a point that society out there and the people out there, they don't have a barrier to stop them from doing homosexual acts. Our barrier is Christianity. The Bible is saying don't do that. That's our barrier. That's why we're not doing it. That's why our opinion is that it's bad. When I came to America, I've been there a few years. Somebody asked me, "Are you a Christian?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "How about you?" "Yeah, I'm a Christian." I asked them, "What kind?" They're like, "I don't know." I'm like, how do you not know?" And I've asked many people, "Are you a Christian?" "Yeah." "Do you go to church?" "No." And I haven't crossed the door of a church in years. I'm like, they just know what their religion is. They don't know the religion and the foundation of the religion. That's how there is no barrier to stop anything. You know what I mean? Like dating. Well, dating, you want to date someone, and then something happens, a problem happens, you break up, you go to the next person, and that's that's how it starts.
This topic can go on forever, but
Okay.
we don't have forever. So our time is up. This is a microcosm of our church today. So whether you're in your household watching this with your children, whether you're at church watching this with your Sunday school kids, this is it. It's a little bit of confusion. It's a little bit of not knowing what is love, what is not love, what is judgment, what is not judgment. It's a topic that drew everybody that worked with us for the past few weeks, because everybody was interested in talking about this topic. One episode is not going to be enough, but that's all we have for now.
Thank you for being with us today on another episode of Come and See.